guys, it's Jade here and welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to be showing you how I made my TVA Loki cosplay jacket. I know I'm not in the full cosplay right now, but I did forget to film an intro and an outro while I was in the costume and I can't be bothered to put it all back on. So you've got this weird mismatch today. This video is basically just going to kind of be like a worklog kind of video. I filmed it as I was making it and it gives you some insight into actually how I constructed this. I did base it from a pattern and I will talk about this in the video. I did not draft this from scratch, by the way. If you're looking to make a cosplay jacket like this and you kind of know the basics of sewing, I would say give it a shot with the pattern I used. It actually wasn't too bad. I am in the sort of beginner to intermediate range as a sewer, sewist, seamstress, whatever it is. So if you are kind of like me, sort of know the basics of sewing and you're sort of still exploring it, I would say this isn't actually too difficult. If you are still relatively new to sewing and you do want to give it a go, I say give it a go. You're not going to learn unless you try it, so just try it and see what happens. Enough about me rambling. I really hope you enjoy the video and I hope it's of some use to you. So, starting off with the jacket, I made a mock-up first, following this pattern here, which is Burda 6932. It's just a men's jacket. I went with the short version. Basically, you can get the long version, which is pretty much the same, but longer, but I decided to go with shorter just because I wasn't sure what I wanted. So I thought I'll go with the shorter and then if I don't like it I can change it up. So this is the basic pattern here. The only thing I changed on this was the pockets. On the pattern, I don't know whether you can see there, but they have like little flap pockets. But Loki's jacket has double welt pockets. I knew how to sew those already, so I added some double welt pockets on here. They are only test ones, so they don't go very deep. I'm keeping the sleeves how they are, I'm keeping the collar and such how it is. This coat has buttonholes, Loki's doesn't, he has like snaps, so I didn't add any buttonholes because there's no point. But also Loki doesn't wear his jacket done up, so I'm probably not going to wear mine done up either, just because I don't really like the idea of having a jacket that does up with snaps. There are 3 things on this that I want to change when it comes to making the actual jacket. One, I want to bring down the pockets. They're a little bit too high. You know, when I try and just put my hands in them, I look like I'm bringing my shoulders up around like my ears and they're a little bit too high up. So I'm going to bring these down probably about 4 centimetres, not very much, but just so it makes it a little bit more comfortable to put my hands in. I also want to make the jacket a little bit longer. It's just slightly too short. Loki's comes down and sort of hits his hip area around here. So I don't need to bring this down by much. So I'm probably just going to stick about 5 centimetres on the bottom just to bring it down a little bit. The length is not too bad now, but I just think it looks a little bit too short. So yeah, about 5 centimetres on the bottom just to make it a little bit longer. And the last thing I want to change is the back. You probably can't see on this, but if I get a little bit closer, there is a seam running down the middle. So the back of this jacket was made with 2 pieces. I'm going to turn this into 1 because Loki's does not have a back seam because he has the word variant printed on the back. So I need to basically turn these 2 panels into 1 big piece instead of 2 and then sew them together. Other than that, the interfacing I picked is pretty stiff for the collar, so I can do the nice pop thing that he does. So yeah, I'm pretty happy with everything else. So it's just those 3 things. I am now going to start changing up the pattern pieces and lengthen them to what I need them to be. So these are all of the fabric samples I got through to try and find the perfect fabric for Loki's jacket. Now the main issue I had with Loki's jacket was the colour. In every shot in the TV show, in every different lighting he's in, it changes. It could look very grey like this, or sometimes it looks green, but most of the time it stays to sort of like a beigey brown. Sometimes it looked as dark as the brown trousers that he wears, but in other shots it didn't. So I sort of tried to stick with a lighter shade of brown than the trousers just because I didn't want it to look like a monotonous shade of brown. I wanted a couple of different colours in the whole costume. Now because the scenes are different and the lighting is vastly different in them, I decided to just pick one scene, one shot and stick with that colour no matter what. And I thought my best bet was to go with natural daylight. And the only scene I could think of was the scene where he goes to the Renaissance fair. So you can see here, these are really not great. I wasn't sure if I liked the fabric or not. I did decide that I wanted to go for this one because I liked the colour of it, it was pretty close, and I quite liked the fabric. But then I realised that it is in fact a stretch fabric. You can't see here, but it it does stretch, and I thought, you don't really want to make a jacket out of a stretch fabric, so goodbye. The lining of the jacket, you can't really see. I rewatched parts of the show today and I finally managed to see the inside, and it looked to be the same sort of colour as the outside of the jacket. But I'd already bought my fabric at that point, and I decided to just go for a basic brown lining fabric because you're not going to see it. So it doesn't really matter what fabric it is. But I decided to stick with brown just because it's a TVA uniform, and the TVA sort of sticks to brown and orange and grey as their main colours. So I thought, let's go with brown because it's a harmless colour. You know, I'm not going to go for something that's bright red, even though it might be quite fun. It doesn't fit the aesthetic, I suppose. So in the end, I went for these two fabrics. I went for the brown lining fabric. It's quite thin, but usually when you're in costume and cosplay, you get really hot no matter what layers you're wearing. So a thin layer is actually pretty good for me. Now this is the fabric I went for in the end for Loki's jacket. I think the colour is as close as I could possibly get it to the scene where he's at the Renaissance Fair. It's not perfect. During my research, I did actually find the exact jacket they used for Loki. Now, if my memory serves me correctly, I think it was some sort of hunting outdoor jacket, which makes sense. So what I ended up doing was going for this soft raincoaty fabric. I don't know if it's showing up very well on camera, but it's kind of got this slightly shiny, reflective raincoat feel. It's really soft and it's not really obvious that it's a raincoat, but it reminds me very much of a good outdoor jacket fabric. So I think I got quite lucky there, to be honest. So now that I have my fabrics, it's time to start cutting them out. And this is my least favourite bit. I hate cutting up fabrics. It takes so long and it's so tiring. So let's just get on with it and get it over and done with. So it's tea break time. I've cut out all of my fabric, both from the lining and from the main fabric, and I've also added all of like the markings and notches and all that kind of thing that are on the pattern. You don't have to like draw out the seam allowance because I tell you that it's added in, but I like to usually just draw the line for me to sew on, just because I'm really bad at like sewing in a straight line. So if I draw it on, then it's not so bad. The next thing for me to do is to do the pockets. Now, you know, normally I'd start sewing it up and add the pockets in, but it's just easier to get the pockets out of the way because they're welt pockets. It's just easier to get them done and out of the way first, and then I can sew up the rest of the jacket and all that good stuff. I can't believe it. I literally can't believe it. I haven't sewn in ages. I get on the floor to start cutting out fabric and my back goes. I'm cursed, I am. I'm telling you, I'm cursed. So my welt pockets are now finished. They're pretty basic. They're quite easy to do, I say that. I'll leave a link in the description for a really good video tutorial if you want to know how to do welt pockets. It's the video that taught me how to do them, so I highly recommend it. I didn't make the pockets themselves that big because I don't think I'm really going to use them, because I prefer the big pockets on the trousers I have. I just don't think I'm going to put much in them. So the pockets themselves are actually quite small, so that's as far as my hand will go into them, but it doesn't really matter to me. But yeah, they're not too bad. They're a little bit wonky, and I didn't realise, but I think it's on this one, my iron got caught on the fabric and I melted a little bit of it, but thankfully it's not in a really obvious place, like you're not really going to notice it, so it's fine. But yeah, welt pockets are now done. They look pretty good, if I do say so myself, pretty sexy. So yeah, the next thing to do, I think, is to do the shoulder seams. I'm basically just following the instructions that come with the pattern. I might make the odd tweak myself, so if you're using my video to make your own, this is not going to be exactly the same as what I've done because I've made my own modifications to it. Like, for example, the first thing is to sew up the back seam, but I don't have a back seam because I've cut it as one whole piece. But yeah, I believe the next thing for me to do is the shoulder pieces and the collar. I'm actually going to leave this for tomorrow because I have done so much today and I'm really knackered. So I've sewn up the shoulder seams on the body of the jacket itself, and I've also done the collar. So now that's ready to be pressed. I need to press like this seam so it's nice and flat. And then we basted this onto the body of the jacket. So we basted it, which is basically, if you don't know what basting is, it's just putting a really loose, rough stitch onto it to hold, so it holds it in place so you don't have to just keep pinning it. But yeah, basically we're just going to put that onto, wait, there we go. It will go onto the body like this. Once the collar is on, we then have to add the front facing. So as you can see, I've basted the collar now onto the jacket itself. It looks really weird, but can I do this one-handed? I think I can. When you fold it over, it's stuck. Wait for it. There you go. When you fold it over, it turns into a collar. Wow, and then this is obviously the other part of the collar. So now I need to add the facing, which is going to be sewn along the inside here. So obviously when this folds open like it would on a jacket, you don't have this horrible thing. You have a nice piece of finished fabric and some nice seams. So that is the next thing to do. But yay, look, it's coming together. The only thing I don't like about this fabric is it creases so easily. I've ironed this about 100,000 times, but obviously because I'm still screwing it up and moving it around my desk, it just creases up, which is not that great. So I've now done the body of Loki's jacket. The side seams are all sewn up, so now we just have the sleeves to go and then we do the lining. I did hem down the bottom. It's just a raw hem at the moment, so yeah, you can see it all folded up in there. But yeah, my machine was having a bit of a moment, so I had to like keep sewing in little bits so you can see like random bits of thread because my machine was not having it. So the next thing to do is the sleeves on the outer jacket, and then I need to sew up the lining. Basically we just sew it up exactly the same as this, add the sleeves onto the lining, and then you stick the lining inside and then it's done, and then I have to do all the snaps. Woohoo! If I'm honest, sewing sleeves is like the worst part of sewing anything to me. I hate doing sleeves, I hate them. So I don't know how much I'm going to film of me sewing the sleeve because it will be a lot of swearing and getting frustrated, so I think I'll probably do this off camera and I'll show you what it's like when I've done the sleeves. But yeah, basically I am just going to keep following the instructions that came with the pattern. So you sew the front and back piece together, sew it up, and then you like baste it and then sew it into the armhole. But just remember to be careful when you sew it up into the armhole that you don't sew it on the wrong way, or you sew the right arm in the left hole, for example. Don't do that, because I've done that so many times and it's so frustrating. He has sleeves at last. God, I hate sewing them. Ignore that. I'm going to unpick that little bit and re-sew that on because that looks awful. But other than that, we have sleeves. And it needs pressing again, but we have sleeves. So the main outside shell of the jacket is now done. I now just have to sew up the lining, which is basically the same. Get that inside, and then it's done. But yeah, first things first, we're going to fix that, because that's awful. I've already tried to fix it once. You can see the stitches there, which I'm really annoyed about. So if anyone knows how to get rid of those, let me know, because I've got bunch on the back too, and I don't quite know how to hide that because it's I know the collar's going to be kind of over it, but it still looks really obvious. This sleeve is awful. I tried to fix it, but this seam is just atrocious. But I hate sewing sleeves, so I don't even care anymore. I'm just going to press it and be done with it. If it looks awful, it looks awful, but I just hate sewing sleeves so much. It is the worst part of sewing for me. Sleeves are the worst. So I'm just going to suck it up and deal with it. I do need to, you know, press them because they look all wrinkled and horrible. I also hemmed the sleeves. I don't know if you can see that, but the sleeves have been hemmed. So So now is the bit that takes forever. I'm basically going to turn this inside out and sew this onto here and such, so that the lining is now inside. Now this is why it takes forever. It's because you have to make sure you're doing it the right way, otherwise you're going to sew the lining in wrong and it's going to look really weird. So you have to make sure you're doing it the right way, and then you have to like hand sew the hem up on the bottom, like attach the hem to each other by hand. So that's what takes forever. So yay, I can't wait. Okay, so I'm basically just going to explain how to do the lining on the inside, like how to add it into the jacket, just because I always find this really confusing and I wish that someone would have shown me. So on the jacket, if you leave it facing the right way out, and you have the facing here, so you leave the facing and like the inside neck piece here facing the right way out, and then attach your lining right side down onto this edge. So it looks really silly because you've got the correct side of the jacket on the inside and the correct side of the lining. But basically you're going to go sew along this line here, don't go along the bottom, and then when it comes to flipping it the right way around, because the bottom is already free, that's come unpinned, but you know, it ends up being pinned like that inside the jacket, and you can tuck the sleeves in and such. Hopefully that made sense. I just know that I always get really confused with this part, so I thought I'd explain it in case anyone else gets really confused. But you'll see what I mean. I'll show you a better example when I've actually done it. Okay, so I've sewn the lining and the facing on, so as you can see I've stitched all along here and all the way around the back. So now I'm going to show you when you flip it. So I'm going to take the lining piece, flip it over, wait for it, there's the collar, flip it over, and the lining is now stuck on the inside. So when I put the jacket on normally, this is the facing, that's the inside of the facing, and then you have the lining stitched on like that. So hopefully that makes sense. So now that's done, I'm going to press the seams, and then I'm basically going to have to hand stitch all of the hem together, which is the worst part. And also while I'm here, you put the sleeve in through the sleeve, if that makes sense. So you put the lining sleeve in through the normal sleeve, so then you have a nice lined armhole. That's a big loose thread there, I've got to get rid of that. Yeah, hopefully that makes sense. It should do, but my tip is, if you're really not sure about adding the lining, pin it roughly and then practice turning it inside out and seeing what happens first before you sew it, because you don't have to unpick all of that, because it's quite a lot. So just take it slow, pin it, see what happens first. So I've pinned the lining to the hem, so you can see here I've folded up both according to the pattern. Now you're not really meant to hem and sew along there, but I like to do it just because I quite like that it adds a little bit of, I don't know, just a little bit more detail and texture to the jacket, so I've done that. I did that on the sleeves too, but I also use it as a line to pin along the lining to. So basically if you ignore this, because this is what the pattern tells you to do, to like leave like a bit of ease kind of thing on here. So this is stitched on really roughly. So that's according to the pattern, so don't worry that it looks horrible. No one's going to see that anyway. Basically, I'm using a ladder stitch just to stitch this on, so you can't see the stitching on the other side. And I'm just going to basically just follow this line along. So as you can see here, I've stitched it. Don't even know if my camera's going to like getting this close. But as you can see here, I've stitched it as close as I can to this line. And it's also just in case my needle does come through to the other side, you won't be able to see, like, the stitching will be on this line, so you won't really notice. So yeah, there you go. So basically I'm just going to hand ladder stitch all the way along the bottom, and then I'm going to do the same for the sleeves too. So the lining is now inside, so technically the base of the jacket is now finished because everything is lined and stitched on. So now I've got to do the snaps, so I'm going to be sewing them like down here, and then we need to do like the logo printing and stuff. And I bought like some iron-on paper, but I have a feeling it's not going to stick to this, and I really did not want to fabric paint it just because the TVA logo here is really detailed. And I don't think I've got a steady enough hand to paint it, but I guess we'll find out. I'm going to do a test with some paper soon. All the snaps are sewn on. They kind of look like they don't line up, especially like down the bottom here. It doesn't line up perfectly, but to be honest, I'm not going to wear this done up. But they just add a little bit of, you know, detail, and it's what his looks like. So yeah, now it's just the logo on the front and all the writing on the back, and then it's done. So it's been a few weeks now since I did anything to do with Loki because I got COVID. I'm okay. It wasn't too bad, but obviously I couldn't come out of my room and do anything, and I didn't feel great, and I was like, I'm going to mess it up if I keep working on it while I'm ill, so I'm just going to wait. And I've also been sidetracked starting another cosplay of mine, so I really need to finish Loki now and just put him away and be done with him. So I printed out my design, the jacket design, onto some, what's it called? Heat transfer paper. So like if you want to put like your own photo on a t-shirt or something, this is the kind of paper you get. So I thought I'd try that first. I don't know if it's going to stick to this fabric because it's kind of like a raincoaty plasticky fabric. Yeah, I don't know. But I did do a test with some test ones, and ignore the fact that my iron melted that part of the fabric. We're just going to ignore that. It's a good job it is a test. But yeah, I printed out some like a little version of the logo and a couple of letters just to see what it would look like. Yeah, with this one you have to be really careful about cutting around them, because if you leave any white still on what you want, it's going to print it. So you can probably see on the letters that they're not perfect. You can see some white on there. So yeah, they're not great, but it's a test. But it's stuck on really well, thankfully. So I'm going to see if I can cut these out with a cutting mat and a knife instead. See if I can get a smoother cut. But yeah, I'm pretty happy with it. I think the colours look alright. I think the orange is a little bit too dark, but I did, you know, like a colour pick from an actual image, so it's probably going to look a bit different anyway. But yeah, I think it will look alright on the actual jacket itself. So I didn't film me adding the transfer paper onto the jacket itself just because it was stressful and I did not want to film it, and I just, yeah, it's late at night, I can't be bothered. So yeah, the front logo is now on. It looks pretty snazzy. And let's see if I can turn this around to show you the back. There's the back roughly. You'll see it better in a video, better video of it. Yeah, it all went on very smoothly, so now I can officially say that TVA Loki is now finished. And I really, really need to restyle this slightly. Because it's still a bit messy from when I wore it with this. So, oh, I'm so glad this actually stuck on. I'm so glad this worked. I was so paranoid that it wasn't going to work. I just did not want to have to paint this on by hand. This would have been like hell to do. So that's it for this video. I really hope you enjoyed and I really hope it was helpful for you. If you have any questions, please comment them below and I will see if I can answer them. But please bear in mind, I am not the most experienced sewer. I might not know the answer, but I'll give it a go. I really hope this has inspired you to start making your own cosplays too. There's nothing wrong with buying your cosplays. I do it all the time. But for me, personally, making something for cosplay is most of the fun for me. And I actually really enjoyed making this. It did take me a few months, but that's because I have a full-time job. I don't really have time to sew all day. All I'm trying to say is if I can do it, you can do it too. I'm not the best at sewing, but I made a pretty damn awesome jacket that looks great with the rest of my costume. I'm not gonna lie, I did surprise myself when I tried on this cosplay because I thought it was gonna look horrendous. Obviously, I have my Ragnarok Loki cosplay, which I didn't make. I did make the helmet, but I didn't make the rest of it. That is a dream cosplay of mine, and I didn't think anything was gonna top it, but the fact that I actually liked the way I looked in this, and it's comfortable, and it's not too warm, that makes it a 10 out of 10 cosplay for me. I will be wearing this to cons for quite a while because comfortable cosplays are where it's at now. I'm getting older. I don't want to be struggling around in high heels, although my newest cosplay does have heels on it, but you know what I mean? I don't want to struggle anymore, and this is so comfy. It might get a bit warm in the summer, but it's a raincoat, so it'll keep me dry. Anyway, I'm going to shut up now, so thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Hope this is useful. Bye.